A woman has come a long way from playing her traditional roles. An increasing number of women are coming forward to study, pursue higher education, and work in various professions. She is not hesitant to enter into areas which were once considered exclusively male-dominated. Architecture, aviation, engineering, media are just a few to name. Though on one hand this is a progressive trend, on the other hand, we cannot deny the fact that career women are subjected to various discriminations in their day-to-day life. There are certain biases towards women professionals in our society. The established misconceptions about working women in their areas of work range from doubting her intellectual caliber, sense of planning, her degree of efficiency in work, restrictions on her physical mobility, lack of social exposure, inadequacy to handle big projects, and matters regarding money. Home is another factor which adds to these biases and notions. A woman takes a major share of responsibility in handling her home and children. Thus, she stands divided between her home and work, where her time, energies, and emotions oscillate according to the demands. In our program today, we are going to talk to a few lady architects who have proved their worth by their own right. Often women are restricted to choose certain fields which are supposedly man's fields. It's with great difficulty that women can enter into areas of their own choice. Architecture is supposed to be a man's field. What inspired you to take this thing as your career?
Actually, I was trying to get into a man's field. I had gotten chemical engineering and fields like that, and it was architecture was something different. I knew because it had a lot of art and things like that involved in it. And my sisters basically went into professions like medicine and engineering. So we are sort of exposed to this kind of studies in our home. And my dad being also an engineer, it sort of helped us to get into a man's domain. But then architecture, I felt after getting into it's more of man's domain than a woman's, because there's a lot of building industry and you talk about money and that kind of a thing, real estate and talking to clients, and it is, I would think, definitely a man's field, but now you see a lot of women coming into and they're pretty successful as well.
It's mainly because I think from my childhood I've never been I've never been separated out as a boy, from a girl. My brother and me were given almost equal opportunity. And it was just taken for granted that how much ever you could accomplish, with one's own mind, you could do it. So it was the sky's the limit. So architecture was my limit. So I suppose I achieved that. There were no questions asked. I think the only influence which was, the main factor was that I was good in sketching. So that may have been, one of the factors, as well as my father was in the civil engineering field. That could have been another factor.
Yeah, that's true. What inspired you to take this field as a career?
See, basically, I'm a science graduate. I was married to an architect. And watching him working on his projects developed an interest into me, and I ended up studying this architecture.
That is, you picked it up after marriage?
After marriage, I picked it up.
I was interested in architecture since my childhood. So that is how I came into this field. I was interested in art, mathematics, and drawing. So when I was 4 or 5 years old itself, my mother told me that a combination of arts and mathematics is architecture. So from that age, I have thought of architecture as my field.
When I took up architecture, it's basically I was very interested in designing and maths and things like that, and there was a lot of support from my father, and he was very keen that one should take up professions. And at that point of time there were not many professionals or subjects that one could take, and since I was interested in designing and things, and so I took up architecture.
As a student, how would you rate your academic performance with the rest of your class? Was there any bias then?
Yeah, actually we were just 4 and there were around 28 boys, and we would always do very well academically, and both my friend and me, we were pretty good. But there was some kind of condescending attitude of the guys, because building industry has always been a man's domain, and we always felt that we lost out on getting in touch with the builders, architects, and the society.
more
in general.
practical
Yeah,
world side of
yeah, very much. We thought we were, losing out on the practical side of it. Those days, it was always like, women were not really seen as the ones who would come up in their profession. I think boys also had that kind of an attitude, and we'd find such a treatment. At least I would find such a treatment, and I always fought against it subconsciously. It was not a very conscious effort, But I thought, when I'm good enough, why not? I should be equally good.
I know.
So that was the kind of
So you must
atmosphere we
have
had.
passed out with flying colors.
Not really flying colors, but I did a good job, and then I went abroad, did my masters. There I thought I did pretty well because, this kind of biases, I didn't find it so much in US.
Academically,
You
say
are
all your
saying
overall
yourself-
performance.
Academic performance, I was supposed to be topping the class for 3 years.
Oh, that's nice.
So after that, I went into extracurricular. So I slipped down a bit in the last 3 years. I went third or something like that. So regarding the others, because our proportion of boys and girls was very odd, because we were only 4 girls to about 30 boys.
That usually happens in
And it always happens, but always I've noticed that all the girls were much better than the boys. So I don't know what statistics will come up with that, but we were, I think, generally more hardworking and more sincere about our works.
Yeah.
Less nattering around, probably. We were not bad. We were all, between the first and the fifth.
Yeah.
So. I
So
don't
generally,
think it was
girls fared better than boys in the comparative basis.
No, I think the boys were slightly better than the girls, but we had absolutely no. At least we didn't have any complex that we were girls and that we are studying with boys and they are brighter than us. No, we did not. None of us had that, I think.
It's a fact that women do well academically, be it school, college or university. But surprisingly, a woman is not able to exploit her complete potential in her work. Like any other profession, this too must be needing a lot of dedication. So how burdensome do you feel is it to put in a full-time professional work?
Profession, definitely, it needs much more, than probably I'm giving it right now. Because it actually needs, probably as much as you can put in. If you can put in 24 hours, it'll be the best thing which you could do. But there are some limits to a human being as well as limits to a woman also. So we have, it has been a bit burdensome, but I have had a very supportive family.
Yeah, it's a bit burdensome, but see, I have taken it as a career. So I have accepted this as a challenge. So I have to face all the difficulties, and there is my husband to help me.
Once I set up independently, I found that when I went to sites and other places, laborers and site engineers and other people, they look up to a lady not equal to a man. They feel as if we are incompetent. The people look at us and laugh and give us a feeling, what will she do here? She is not capable of doing this work. That is a feeling I got when I started going on the sites as an architect.
Then when I came back, I had an opportunity to get into the college, and this college was something where I had studied before. So I didn't have much of, it was coming back to home kind of a thing. Again, I felt there was some kind of competition between, we had to prove that we are as good as men. You have to attend a lot of workshops and, conduct seminars and also further education. Like I did my PhD after getting into the job, and that was solely because I felt like I'll lose out if I don't really, I'm not in par with colleagues.
In this male-dominated field, what are the difficulties you faced as a woman?
I may have felt it personally that if I was wanting to give more to a project, say, I would have had to, stay more hours, and probably, see to a particular supervision on site. But I was not able to do so because I have to get back home, at a particular time because my children are there at home. That is the only thing which has, bothered me. But otherwise, from a client side, I've never felt any discrimination.
Okay.
So
nobody from the superior side either.
No,
You've been
I've
lucky enough not to, have that.
Maybe the clients expect, in fact, equal. They expect the same amount of work from a woman as much as they expect from a man.
Yeah.
Though a woman is not, able to give as much, but then it doesn't show this much in our field because architecture is such that it goes on for months on end. You don't have a deadline of a day or so.
When you are working, work doesn't pour in always. When you are on one project, another project doesn't come easily. You have to socialize, you have to meet people, you have to go to clubs and other places, and a PRO relationship has to be there. Without that, if you sit in your own office, you don't get much work. And being a lady, and with my nature, we don't go out so often in the evenings with the family. So that is a disadvantage.
I personally don't feel it like that. But sometimes they may feel that she is a lady, she may not be able to handle the big projects. But unless they watch our work, how they can say that I haven't find any, I didn't find anything like this. Especially in interior, there's a ladies, means women's world.
Yeah.
So we are doing very well in the interiors.
Okay, like I said,
Now, especially in this century, I think women are definitely taking much better positions than even some men are. I think they should be biased. What are the difficulties you face as a woman in your profession?
I do practice a little bit, and I find that at every point I have to prove to the clients that I'm as good, I can handle them as well as how men would do. In fact, sometimes I feel probably I'm better than most men because I do have a sense of architecture very much ingrained in me. So I do find that at every point you need to prove them that you are capable of handling a big project. And initially the residences we don't have much problem, interior decoration we don't have much problem, but apartments sometimes we do get, but I'm trying to capture the real upmarket, like the building industry, which is a lot of money involved in it. And I do find that such projects there is a little hesitance to give it to a woman, and we feel we are able to handle it as well as how men would handle. I think I've noticed such a bias.
Women, whether artists or scientists, have to manage and rear children. So they divide themselves to build monuments outside and beautify their lives at home. Apart from being a competent professional, you also hold an additional responsibility of being a caretaker, a lady of the house. So how do you merge both your roles as a lady of the house as well as a competent career woman?
See, as a professional, I can't devote all my time as a professional. So male architects always have the edge over us. They can go with the client anywhere at any time. So I can't do like that. I have a family.
Yeah.
So I have to devote my time to my family. My time is divided, my energy is divided. See, and psychologically also, whenever I am on the work, if I am little late, then I always feel that my children are there. So I feel sometimes guilty. So sometimes I'm guilty conscious also. So I try to go home early. So that's not in the case of the male architects.
Yeah.
Their wife is there at home to take care of the children.
As a career-oriented woman, probably, I'm not able to give, say, 100% of me, of how much I am able to give. Say if a man was in my own, on par, if I'm working alongside a man, he would be able to give much more to it than I'm giving right now. That is my only grudge. But as a housewoman, I think I'm amply supported by my husband. In fact, he's much more of a house husband, rather than than I being a housewife. So that's a difference.
So what about your children? Do they demand some more time of you than you can give them?
Well, definitely they would. Definitely
Complaining
they
sometimes?
do. Yes, of course. They want, especially the fact that they are not allowed to bunk, because I cannot bunk my office work, so they are not allowed to bunk their school work. So they had this big grouse, that other kids do bunk, and how come we are not allowed to? That's the only thing. But otherwise, because right from the beginning, they have never seen me at home, so they really don't find much of a drawback that way. Except on holidays. That's the only problem, is when they have holidays, I am not able to spend time with them. I have to be here in the office. That definitely is there, but I do try and make up.
Actually, it's mainly the management of time, I suppose. My day starts not very early, but in the morning hours, it's the kids home, keeping the house proper. And then it's like how housewives do. Once everybody goes, they have time to themselves. So instead of indulging in, frittering away the time, I try to put it in a real hardcore professional way. I go to college, I go to, clients, and I try to spend the time that I have in between. And again, in the evenings, I have to talk to the children and teach them homeworks, husband, and that kind of thing. But after 9, I get a lot of time, because as a student, I was used to mostly operating at the night time. So from 9 to at least 11 or 12, in case there is some reading, thinking to do, I get a lot of time. So it's not very taxing. It's a regular routine, but it gives me the time to do what I want to. So I don't really find it very difficult, but the additional responsibility of, taking care of the home, and that I feel it's a little burdensome, but you have to do it because it's your responsibility.
Yeah, which the male counterparts need not have to cope up with such things. Maybe.
They do sometimes put in a little bit of effort to, help you out, but the responsibility is yours, So you are answerable to anything that's not in the right way at home. So he's not responsible, though he butts in a little bit and helps out. So the responsibility, I think, solely lies in, at least in my house, on me,
I don't work full time. I start in the mornings, my children go to school, and when the children come back home at 3, I'm at home. So I give the time in the afternoon to my children, and I see that I don't come back to my work after the children are home. I'm working when my children go to school. That is the period of time. Woman, she has her heart into her work as well as her home, in the children. So she is not able to do full justice to her home if she works full time.
See, I have no children, so maybe that is one point which I have. And between home and I manage till now I'm doing, and my in-laws stay with me. So in Hyderabad I have no problem.
Yes, our family members also have to adjust with us. They have to cooperate with the working lady. So for whenever there is a lot of work in the office, so I have to devote more time for my office work. So they understand that I have these difficulties. They have accepted me as a career woman. So, and when I have less of work in the office, I devote more time with my family.
How supportive were your parents when you first joined this field?
No, they expected me to be a good professional, and they were supportive. I mean, they didn't think of anything else. And there's a difference between now and then, because that time it was just my studies and my friends' play, but now it's the onus of the responsibility is there. So I find that difference after I'm married.
Could you tell us more about your work and just give a few tips for the upcoming architects?
We have actually evolved from we started from residences, and we've evolved into commercial complexes, apartments, and into factories also. I have another partner who is a structural person, Mr. Magal. So with him we do main factories, big projects, as well as now actually I'm diversifying into interiors. Interiors gives me much more, I think, design power, at a much shorter time. So you realize your designs in a very short span of time, rather than architecture. Architecture takes, it can even take up to 2 years, 3 years. So that does drag on a bit, while interiors gets completed within 3 to 6 months. So you get much more satisfied. It's definitely more lucrative. This is one office which I've enjoyed doing tremendously. Well, firstly, because the client has given me full freedom, and secondly, also the color black. I like the color black a lot. I feel it's a very handsome color, and the client himself did not have any objection. Normally, otherwise, black is a color which is very inauspicious, normally people consider. But this has worked out tremendously well, if you've noticed, in this office, with white cedar. I've worked it out with white cedar and black. Actually, I'm now actually trying to go more into ethnic in the sense more native stuff, more indigenous material, more raw materials, more material which is in thing, as well as going low cost, because everything, I think all the resources are diminishing, so we have to become more responsible designers.
Yeah.
We have to try and use some other substitutes rather than wood, say, and use more low cost stuff, because construction costs are spiraling, and it's really criminal on our part to design astronomical buildings which cost tremendous amount and really please the client.
Yeah. So as a teacher, how do you feel your experiences are?
Initially, I feel all students, they try to gauge you, how knowledgeable you are and that kind of a thing. And initially, I felt like they didn't really, take me for what I am as a teacher. I had to again prove them, doing my PhD and, a little bit of consultancy and, giving them proper knowledge in the class. So at every point of time you have to prove, because these days students are so smart that they evaluate their teacher. It's not like those days where you took the teacher for granted and whatever they say is sort of a sermon or whatever. But I find that, but now that they accept you totally. Whereas in practice, at every point you do have to prove to everybody, right from the mason to the client who is very, rich and that kind of a thing.
We have done a lot of mostly on English style of designing of, like whatever we are doing in offices and homes, and more on that kind of an architecture than designing than mostly Indian, because there are very few people who would like to go into an ethnic design. Very, very few. They would like, now it's coming back, like they would say, okay, one room you give us which is ethnic, which we would love to do that,
My main aim now is to develop the interior design line and profession for the young people. There was no good institute in Hyderabad when I started, and still there is no institute in the whole of Andhra Pradesh which is teaching interior design for 3 years and making students professionals. So I am devoting my time in the education line, and I want the students to become professionals in interior design. They can be assistants to architects and they can do their work independently.
Then now that you hold a very high and responsible position, what would you say about this point of life, about your status right now?
It's pretty good, but then sometimes it gets very embarrassing, because I feel I don't really, I don't have the personality to carry off such a honest responsibility on me. But once it is given, I'm not like the typical, boss kind of a person. And in academics, we're all equal. So it's more or less in a friendly way. It's just a title that is given, I would think. And I have very friendly colleagues and very friendly director who's understanding. So it's just a title which is more or less, embarrassing to hold.
While designing this house, I have given consideration to the Vastu, because client was insisting on the Vastu. Then linear designing, she wanted to have the less of maintenance. So we have taken the straight lines everywhere to avoid these curvy linear lines and anything which will add into their maintenance problems. My client particularly wanted visitors to be entertained separately from the family friends. So we have separated from the entrance lobby itself the drawing room and living area.
If you didn't have that additional responsibility of looking after your home, how do you think you would have spent it?
I think I would rather read a lot of books and socialize with friends and spend time, a lot of leisure I would have had. But this sort of ties me down from the leisure. So whatever little bit of time I get in between, I try to read, and the kind of things that I cherish as a child, that I miss out on actually, gossiping and playing around with friends and that kind of.
The concept of success is different for both sexes. The real success for a woman depends on her family, which is understanding and supportive. A woman is inherently creative, and she shows it both at home and at profession.